Good morning, all. Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, friends. I want to start by thanking UNESCO and China and everybody who was responsible for getting me here, because it for me is an important milestone. Some years ago there were the Olympics in Beijing, and friends of mine from Jamaica visited the Olympics and took the opportunity to sightsee in China. They went everywhere from the Great Wall to traditional villages, and they had a wonderful time. But coming back to report, apart from the phenomenon that was Usain Bolt, the only other thing that they spent time on was that water show that they saw in Hangzhou with the lights and the water. I was so happy that I had the opportunity to see it last night, because I think it was an amazing coming together of technology, creativity, and telling a traditional story in a seamless, spectacular way. I come to this discussion, I'm not an academic and I don't mean that in a bad way. But to the extent that I'm supposed to do a case study, I guess the case study I'm doing is a case study of Jamaica, which is where I'm from. And I'm just going to make a few observations on the past 40 years and what it has meant in terms of participation at the level of the people in Jamaica. I come to the conversation by way of theatre and cultural administration and policy. As such, I've been involved in the performing arts as creator and practitioner, as well as at the level of policy. During the 1960s and 70s, the Caribbean and indeed the world saw much political upheaval. There was Vietnam, the Cold War, the oil crisis, the IMF stranglehold on small economies with their insistence on structural adjustment. On the other hand, several responses emerged internationally in many spheres. In religion, there was liberation theology. In education, through thinkers such as Freire. In the arts, with the rise of protest music and popular theatre, all with a view to empowering people to seize control of their destinies. This period in Jamaica marks the rise of Michael Manley, a politician who faced harsh sanctions from the USA as he struggled to break free from the strictures of the international economic powerhouses and explore the possibilities of democratic socialism. As Marley put it, if they were the big tree, we were the small axe. One of Manley's objectives was economic independence, which could not become a reality with the existing high levels of unemployment and poverty, and the reluctance of investors to enter into agreements which were frowned upon by the mighty USA. Therefore, ways had to be found to effect social change by harnessing the power of the masses of the people to struggle for their own betterment. One of the programs established put hundreds of persons to work cleaning the streets as a means of immediately addressing the high levels of unemployment. And it was from this group that a small number of women were drawn to explore ways in which theatre could impact on their lives and attitudes and have them influence others to understand the basis of their condition and empower them to take control of certain areas of their lives. This was the birth of Sistren Theatre Collective, which evolved into one of the foremost practitioners of popular theatre, focusing on women's issues and taking their work throughout the world as an important element in the process of oppressed persons taking action to alter their conditions. The popular theatre process begins with participants developing an understanding of their own issues and through theatre acting out possibilities for addressing these issues, as it were, rehearsing for life. And as it was with Sistren, so it was with another group which grew out of the Jamaica School of Drama, the Groundwork Theatre Company, which had as its focus the empowerment of youth. The women of Sistren told their own stories and developed their own aesthetic of physical theatre using traditional cultural forms. They made an impact internationally both in academia and in theatre. But more importantly, their work raised their own self-esteem and enabled them to become animators in their own right, raising the self-esteem of others with whom they worked. GTC, on the other hand, started out as trained theatre practitioners who shared a post-colonial ideological and aesthetic interest and became animators within physical communities around Jamaica. Later broadening their scope to include communities of broad interests throughout the Caribbean. Youth was their focus, and it was youth on the corner, youth in schools, youth in churches, youth in any sort of community. Using similar models, the Eastern Caribbean Popular Theatre Organization, ECPTO, also came into being, and together these groups carved out an important space for the cultural voice to make itself heard in the development process of the region. Here it must be stated that understanding culture in the anthropological sense, all of these efforts depended on the community for its aesthetic. The work presented the people to themselves in a way that allowed them to examine notions of themselves, of their identities, conditions, and of their future, and arrive at conclusions on their desired directions, which conclusions could then be given voice in a variety of ways, including the artistic. The participation of the grassroots in national conversation was assured. Though not exclusively, much of this participation was fostered through popular theatre. However, it soon became clear that though the voice of the people was heard, limited action was possible, as there was no infrastructure, no policy framework which enabled their vision of development to be holistically realized. So people were empowered to become agents of their own development, but found that their efforts could only bring limited success within a very limited sphere. NGOs sprang up in their numbers. Micro projects began in communities, often funded by international donor agencies, facilitating important environmental, social, and/or cultural objectives with no chance of sustainability without economic support. Governments and their agents had an ambivalent attitude, as communities seemed to require less from them, and they were getting on without them. But the wish for the people to remain within their sphere of influence, especially important at times of elections. The private sector defended their narrow self-interest, and for the most part only regarded the popular movement as a means of ensuring that crime levels were kept low. As projects proved to be unsustainable, frustration set in. People recognized that all the development efforts had to be connected if genuine progress were to be made. Participation was diminished as the leadership created through the popular theatre process migrated away from their communities to try to survive independently. So the people's energy shifted to the push for policy. Culture was recognized as an area of functional cooperation within the Caribbean community, and it was the region's culture ministers that had to be convinced of the need for policy. It was recognized that even though it might not be written, cultural policy could be discerned from the treatment the area was given by governments. But it was hoped that in articulating the policy, the interconnected infrastructure and approach which was required would become apparent and therefore established. A body known as the Regional Cultural Committee, made up of directors of culture from all CARICOM member states, undertook to lead this push. Up to this point, though efforts had been made in almost all Caribbean countries to have cultural policy established, no process had been completed. governments paid lip service to the will of the community, and where the process of policy formulation advanced, it was never completed before changes in government brought changes to the processes and to the objectives. A new approach was therefore indicated. Forums were held all over the region at all levels of the society and with a wide range of institutions, cultures, and communities on the requirements of a culture. The JAMPRO, another government agency concerned with investment, commissioned a creative development plan, and this was drafted in 2007. Implementation of the measures proposed in these documents would have led to a healthier situation obtaining today. But as that has largely not been done, what are the prospects for the future? Interestingly enough, a private sector financial institution is now starting a program which may be sowing the seeds for real participation once again. The philanthropic arm of the Jamaica National Building Society is leading the collaboration to establish social enterprises which are being proposed by the community, financed by an international agency, the USAID, and facilitated by academia, the private sector, and government agencies. Known as the Social Enterprise Boost Initiative, it aims to mobilize increased employment, investment, and revenue within communities in a socially responsible manner and create an enabling environment in which the enterprises can move from subsistence to sustainable wealth creation while nurturing from business development specialists. The projects will emerge from the culture of the people and will therefore be reflective of their aspirations. The training that will be available will build capacity, empower them, and with their empowerment comes a restoration of agency. This project will create a network, this program will create a network through which they can support each other. The groups can support each other and increase the reach of their voice in the national project. Their social objective, be it health, education, environment, or human rights, will benefit from their economic activity and resonate with their cultural life as an important dimension for their well-being. Altogether, this will facilitate organization from the bottom up, and as such, it will help to modify the existing infrastructure to fuel the social partnerships required for progress. Sadly, only 45 organizations will benefit directly in the first 3 years, but the ripple potential is enormous. The University of the West Indies has conducted baseline research so as to be able to measure its impact as the program progresses. With the necessary support, success will inspire others, increasing the participation in the development process of those persons whom it is most intended to benefit. As was stated yesterday, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but there are certain principles involved in this process that might be useful to others. The necessity for public, private, and third sector partnerships, the support for people to develop their own ideas, a programmatic rather than a project approach, which will include a business path to support specific social and cultural goals. As Marshall Salins, I don't know his name is pronounced, has noted, it is meaningless to talk of the relation between culture and the economy, since the economy is part of a people's culture. Thank you.